Western medicine, and it's got its place. But then I went to a holistic doctor, and he's like, Beth, the two most inflammatory things are refined sugar and gluten. So I got off of those. And in 5 days, I wasn't getting out of bed like this hunched over arthritic woman. My joints didn't hurt as much. My headaches went away. And then I added being dairy free as well. And that even helped more with my joints. So I thought, you know what? My life transformed by just getting rid of a couple things. And how easy is that? So I started doing research and I discovered that really the 5 key things we need to focus on is our nutrition, getting movement every day, having social connection, getting restorative sleep, and having some sort of mindfulness practices. And I kind of had all those, but not in a really good package. And so I started working on that and making some great discoveries and some evolution for me personally, and then developed my company, 5 Pillars of Health, where our goal is to reach the great calm.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about becoming your best self. I'm delighted to welcome Beth Young. Beth is a keynote speaker, health and wellness coach, and the founder of The Great Calm. She is also a recipient of the Houston Women in Excellence Award. You can reach Beth at her website, thegreatcalm.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Beth. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thanks, Linda. It's such a privilege to be here. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
And it is a privilege for me. And I love what I do because I get to talk to such wonderful people and I get to hear such wonderful stories and to be reminded often about following basic principles. So I hope that that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into that, is it okay if we hear your personal transformation journey?
Absolutely. I was blessed to be raised in a home where healthy living was not modeled. My folks smoked and drank, which was pretty common back in the olden days because I'm old in chronologically, not physically or how I feel. Anyway, and I saw it didn't serve my family well. My dad died when he was 63, so I outlived him, but he had bad genes. My mom lived to be 92, but she spent the last 9 years of her life living with me because she'd been smoking for 60 years and had 2 lung diseases. And, there was a lot of things that impeded the quality of her life, but not the quantity of it. Although I swear she could have lived to be 120 had she not smoked and drank. So I saw as a kid, I didn't want that. So I didn't smoke, I didn't drink. I didn't have a perfectly healthy lifestyle, but I was active and I knew I had some good genes in me. And so life went pretty normal, just living a normal, healthy life, nothing extreme, nothing fancy. And then I started having really bad headaches when I was in my 30s and 40s. And we tracked them and we figured it was just hormonal. But I had an inspired doctor that said, let's just do a CT scan. And she did. And I had this big old tumor on my brain. We named it Willie. And it's the best tumor you can have because it wasn't cancerous. It was in the meningia, so it was easy to cut out after they cut me ear to ear and peeled down my face and drilled into my head, right? So, but the headaches didn't go away. And so I tried other things in the doctors, Western medicine, and it's got its place. But then I went to a holistic doctor and he's like, Beth, the two most inflammatory things are refined sugar and gluten. So I got off of those. And in 5 days, I wasn't getting out of bed like this hunched over arthritic woman. My joints didn't hurt as much. My headaches went away. And then I added being dairy free as well because I had a son that needed to be, and that even helped more with my joints. So I'm trudging along really nicely for probably, I don't know, like 4 years after that. And I thought, you know what? My life transformed by just getting rid of a couple things. And how easy is that? So I started doing research and I discovered that really the 5 key things we need to focus on is our nutrition, getting movement every day, having social connection, getting restorative sleep, and having some sort of mindfulness practices. And I kind of had all those, but not in a really good package. And so I started working on that and making some great discoveries and some evolution for me personally, and then developed my company, 5 Pillars of Health, where our goal is to reach the great calm. And so I've lived that for, golly, 15 years now. And 3 years ago, my husband and I were in a really bad car accident. We got T-boned and my side airbag didn't deploy. So I got a really bad traumatic brain injury and a brain bleed, along with broken face, broken nose, broken ribs. But those all healed. But the brain, boy, you see on TV, someone gets a concussion and they're up fighting the bad guy 5 minutes later, and that is not real. after a bad brain injury, your brain gets rattled around in your head, and there's a lot of symptoms that can result from that over the next few months, few years. But I had always been happy, easygoing, never anxious. And man, when that hit, I was really ticked off all the time. But I talked with my neurotherapist as we started going through the variety of things to do to help get me better. And that, of course, entailed a lot of things. And I was complaining to her one day about how hard it was and feeling guilty about that. Because when I'd go into my appointment, there would be people coming into that particular department that were like in wheelchairs and only be able to move because they could use their hand on the wheelchair. And I walked into my appointment. There were people coming in with walkers and dragging a leg behind them. And I walked into my appointment. I'm thinking, I know I'm being ungrateful that I'm alive and I'm not as bad as other folks, but I still don't like where I am. And so I was complaining, why didn't you tell me that I'd have this depression, this anxiety? And I went hiking and I had an anxiety attack. And what the heck, only I had a trunk driver mouth instead, which I hadn't had since I was a teenager. So anyway, it was a mess. And she said, "Hey, Beth, I can't tell you all the symptoms that you can or could have because there's many. And I don't want to overwhelm you, but I will tell you this. You are at least 6 months ahead of everyone else I've worked with that have had a brain injury as bad as yours." And she says, "I can tell you why. You live your 5 pillars." She says, "That's significant." Because we had talked about the things I regularly ate and that sort of stuff. She says, "The majority of what you're eating is brain food. You know the importance of getting quality sleep, and you also realize the importance of having mindfulness practices. And those 3 things are key in recovering from a brain injury." And I thought, okay, I'll settle down now. And so it was helpful to know that. And it also reminded me that I needed to really focus on my 5 pillars, even more for myself. Prior to that, people say the doctor is often the most unhealthy person in the office because they're helping everyone else. And I was probably one of the most busy person and over giving more to others than taking care of myself until after this car accident. And I realized, okay, I need to practice more what I preach from a mindfulness standpoint. And that was very insightful and helpful as well. And what I learned from all of that is it doesn't have to be rocket science. There are just basics that we need to do. When I was growing up, we had the food pyramid, which for me seemed mind-boggling. I have to count how many servings of the grains and the this and the that, and it was hard. Now we have the plate. It's simple. You picture the plate. Half of it's fruits and veggies, more veggies. The other half, you have a quarter of a protein and a quarter of a healthy grain, which doesn't count as potato chips, so it doesn't have to be that hard, but there are foods you can eat that support your brain more. The blueberries and other berries, nuts, especially walnuts, plants that look like a brain, like cauliflower, or walnuts that look like a brain. Those sorts of things really support our brain. The omega-3s, those sorts of things. And so there's things we can do that are specifically tied to brain health and emotion and help us feel better and things feel worse. We often think about, gosh, everyone has that food coma after Thanksgiving, and they think it's all the tryptophan in the turkey, and that certainly is part of it. But it's a lot of the carbo load we just went through and all the stuff we just eat. And so we don't feel good. If we pay attention, we'll realize, gosh, when I went out and had pizza and 2 slices in the salad would have been enough, but I ate half the pizza. And then I wanted to slog in front of the TV. We just need to learn to listen to our bodies. So as I was growing my 5 pillars, I realized that I don't have to be a certified nutritionist. I don't have to be certified in athletic training. I don't have to be certified in all these things, but I realized what I needed to get certified in was the mindfulness aspect, because if I'm depressed or anxious or in a bad mindset, I eat differently than if I'm in a good mindset. If I'm depressed, I don't want to go work out. If I'm depressed, I don't want to be social. If I'm depressed or anxious, it's hard to sleep. So I realized the mindfulness piece was a real powerful component of helping those other 5 pillars work successfully. But I also weave in Tai Chi, which is what I got certified in, because there are over 700 medical studies of the benefits of Tai Chi. But the science behind it is when you tie your thoughts to your breath and to your movement, it's like a walking meditation, and it's transformative. And so all these medical studies show, I'm not suggesting not using prescriptions if you struggle with anxiety or depression, but there have been studies of people who didn't want to use medicines and they did Tai Chi regularly. And after 6 months, their symptoms went away. Now, as a disclosure here, in my opinion, that's a Band-Aid fix. Oftentimes there's something underlying that a therapist needs to help us work with, or someone who's an expert in trauma helps us work with. But this helps us get in a position to where we're willing to do that other work, because it's work to figure out, why am I self-medicating, and why am I feeling this way? And so I learned the benefits of that, as well as it helps with diabetes. It's been medically proven to prevent dementia if it hasn't already onset. It's medically proven to be a component of helping slow down Parkinson's. Alzheimer's we can prevent. Your DNA is not your destiny, but how you eat matters. And it needs to be almost like a vegetarian diet. You can have some fish and meat sparingly, but not much. You need to be working out every day to prevent Alzheimer's. You need to have social connection. You need to be getting good quality sleep. And if you're not, you need to figure out how to fix that. You need to have mindfulness practices. So it's my 5 pillars plus one, according to Harvard Medical. And it's, you should be learning something new every day. And that's where we see the real benefits of Tai Chi in that component, because you literally are building new neural pathways as you're practicing Tai Chi. I volunteer out at the senior center, and today one of the ladies came up. She hadn't been for a while, and she's like, I feel so awkward when I do Tai Chi. And I said, that's because that's not how you normally move. So you're literally creating new neural pathways. The Qigong warm-ups we do, as we're doing it, people are like losing their balance and feeling awkward. I'm like, this isn't how you normally walk. But once you get this practiced, you now have more neural pathways. Harvard Medical did a study of people's, autopsied their brains, and they were surprised to find in some brains where there were no symptoms that these people had the lesions of Alzheimer's. And so they looked back at the lifestyle these people had, and it was those 6 things. So because of all of that, their brain was continually growing more neural pathways to fight those lesions that were there, and they never even knew that they had that disease. Now, I'm not a doctor, I can't make promises, but I will tell you, what we put into our body, what we think, it impacts our health. It just does. And so that's why I'm a big fan of Tai Chi and Qigong, because it's a beautiful mindfulness practice. And I've done yoga, and I like yoga, but not everyone can do yoga. It requires some physicality that not everyone might have at first. You need some really good core strength and other things, but it has the mindfulness principles. But so that's why I love what I do, because I can help people find just simple changes. We look at where they are, where they'd like to go, and then we start looking at some simple changes in each one of those 5 pillars. So that's kind of my why, and why I love what I do, and why it doesn't have to be hard if we'll just look at some simple changes. So how's that for a vomiting of my why?
Wow, you have given us so much information. Let's go back a little bit and unpack some of these different things.
Sure.
You have shared with us 3, I would say, major life experiences that can really influence the way a person, your lifestyle, your everything. The first, and I love the way that you presented it, that your parents, and you said that you were blessed to have parents who gave an example of not healthy living. And I love that. We learn from wherever we started, and we can learn to follow and to continue those patterns, or we can learn and say, I see what they're doing, and I see the results, and I want to choose something different. So to me, I first of all, I'm just proud of you for not just following what would be the norm. Our default setting in any time is just to continue to do what we've seen done, unless we make a choice, which you did. And so you did make a choice. You didn't blame your parents. You just said, that was an example. And I learned from that. You also had an example later of this brain tumor and a pretty terrifying surgery taking place. And you also had this traumatic brain injury. So you've had some major life events. And as we're listening to you, when you talk about these events, there is no emotion attached to them. There's no misery or pain or blame or why me or anything. It's just, this happened. And your strength and your power has come from small and simple things. And I really think that that's a powerful, beautiful message. that through these small, simple, consistent action steps that you do, it can help you through whatever life happens to throw to you. And then you gave us a beautiful example of common things that can come, like Alzheimer's and dementia, and how doing these simple things can help us to be able to prevent or make these kinds of things even smaller. And I think that that is a huge takeaway. And you've given so much amazing, beautiful information. But if people can get this small little nugget, that there is great power in small, simple, consistent action steps, and that we have power and that we can feel safe and not be worried about what is going to happen, because life is uncertain. Nobody asks for a car accident. And yet, even if something like that happens, you can be okay. 6 months ahead of the game in the beginning, and then having this amazing conversation here now where you're like, I'm good as new. So thank you. That was beautiful.
Thanks, Linda. I appreciate you pointing out that it's simple steps, because I think that's our brain was created to look for the negative to protect us and stuff. And sometimes it's easy to get caught in that negative thinking and feeling overwhelmed. I was just recently talking to a friend that has struggled with addiction as a teen, got through the drug part, but still had alcohol, which is also an addiction, and had an epiphany about a month ago. And they learned that they just needed to start making these simple changes.
I hope that when people are listening, they feel like, oh, well, I can do that. That's another takeaway we really want, is to say, this can help me and I can do it.
Right.
Because it needs to feel attainable, especially when we're caught in a place of we don't feel like we have any power. We don't feel like we are able to make a difference. So is it okay when we're going through, and you are just so incredibly amazing, when you had that traumatic brain injury and you were struggling with depression and anxiety, just continue to do the 5 steps, or how long did it take before you were feeling like, oh, there I am. I missed me. I'm back. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. The simple changes made it easier for me to do the bigger ones, because obviously I needed therapy. I had to deal with, and I personally believe we all should have a therapist, because we aren't experts in doing life. And I've had some great therapists, and I've fired some not so great therapists. And I had a therapist specifically to help me deal with the anger emotions I was having and the fears I was having. And he said, Beth, think of the word fear. He says it's an acronym. It's false evidence appearing real. So just step back, and I will never forget that acronym. I use it in a resilience class that I teach. It's a 6-week course, and so it gave me the skills to get to the places I needed to go with the professionals, with the experts. Obviously, I needed to go to physical therapy. I needed to go to a chiropractor. But when I couldn't sleep, you often get really bad insomnia. I did all my tips, and I was able to say, not falling asleep. Guess I will get up and do something crafty and not be ticked off about it. But I still wasn't sleeping. So I went to an acupuncturist, and it was miraculous. And I'll tell you, I don't know if any of your listeners have done acupuncture. It's not like it's this big old needle they're jamming into your body. It's a really, really thin. You don't even hardly feel it go in. And so she helped me greatly in my jaw recovery, because when my chiropractor would get in there to work on it, it was so excruciating, more than childbirth, I'm telling you, that it would trigger a depressive disorder. It hurt so bad. So we did acupuncture instead, and that helped get my jaw better. So you want to kind of be open to different modalities, but it gave me, I was able to do the mindfulness practices so that I'd go from truck driver mouth to just being frustrated. And so I still needed experts. My physical therapist was wonderful, because there was just things we needed to work on. It took about 9 months before I was done with all the therapies and wasn't back to normal, but I was able to function at like 5 months. And then 7 months after my car accident, I did a seminar with a couple of my other friends to where we each did a piece of it. And so it didn't require a lot from me. And I invited my neurotherapist. I said, hey, you want to come? And she came. And after we got through my 30 minutes, we had a break and I went over to talk with her and she was crying. She's like, Beth, I don't even recognize you. And I'm so happy, because so she got to see the success she had brought because she really she was supposed to be the neurotherapist, but she was also my mental health therapist. I mean, all the roles rolled into one. And, and that was another testimonial to me about the importance of really embracing these simple pillars.
And thank you for sharing your experience because now we have two very important elements. One is what we can do ourselves, which is a lot.
Yes.
And it is absolutely okay and wonderful to be able to turn to an expert to be able to get the help and the resources that we need. And some people feel like, well, that means I failed because I didn't do it all by myself. And we're here to say, no, that means that you're able to get the help that you needed. Like if my car breaks down and I can take it to a mechanic and have it fixed, that is awesome. It is wonderful to have people who have that skill set to be able to help us work through things. So thank you for bringing that element in as well. We do have a lot of power to take care of ourselves. And part of that power is to choose to bring in additional help. And I think
Yes.
that's all part of showing our power, that we have the power to be able to reach out and get the help we need.
Yeah. And it's because they've got this expertise, it makes it easier. After I had that anxiety attack when I was hiking, which I love to do, I'm like, what the heck? And he's like, Beth, did you know you cannot have an anxiety attack if you're getting enough oxygen to your brain? So I'm going to show you this really cool, unique way to breathe if you're feeling a little anxious, and it'll prevent the anxiety attack. I'm like, what? There's such a thing. And it's just tied to deep, deep breaths, but really, really good breaths. And then deep, deep exhales to get all the dead air out. Because we've got air, we don't sit up straight. We don't often breathe well. And so it gets all that dead air out. And it was like, okay. And I have not had an anxiety attack since then. When now I've gotten closer, I'm like, okay, start breathing, which is hard to do when we're getting anxious, but we can when we have the skills. And it was an expert that taught it to me.
Fantastic. Boy, that's a useful piece of information.
Right. Yes.
Wow. So
Yes.
we can't have an anxiety attack if we have sufficient oxygen.
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting? Because then it takes something that we might think of is mental. An anxiety attack is mental. But when you tie it to if you have sufficient oxygen, you won't have it, then it brings back to actually, this is physiological. This is a
Mhm.
physical
Yeah.
issue that I'm dealing with. I don't need to feel embarrassed. I don't need to feel
Right.
anything. We just have an issue that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
So all is well. Now let's
Mhm.
let's go back and just reiterate. We've talked about the five pillars and mentioned it several times, but let's just go slow and just mention what each one of these is again. Do you want to say them or do you want me to say them or
I'm happy either way.
go for it?
Okay. So nutrition, what we put in our body really does matter. And I am a proponent of there is no diet. It needs to be a lifestyle. And so there are some people that have a intermittent fasting lifestyle, which is a really good lifestyle. It helps. I actually use it because it helps with inflammation, and arthritis runs in my family. And so I'm doing all I can to help support that. But that's not for everyone. And I'm not suggesting it is for everyone. But saying I'm going to go on this diet or that diet, it's not sustainable once we lose the weight or whatever our goal was at the time. We want it to be how we eat regularly and realize that food is fuel for us. So we want to put in the best fuel. And now, like I mentioned, I'm gluten free, I'm refined sugar free, and I'm dairy free. Does that mean I don't have sweets? I had a birthday yesterday and I had the best cake. It was gluten free, refined sugar free. I used coconut palm sugar. It was delicious. It was decadent. But we need to learn what our body needs. And certain foods, some of us have food allergies. We need to be aware of that and avoid them. That's just being wise. As far as the movement, that's when the people are like, oh, are you going to make me do push-ups and sit-ups and go to the gym for 2 hours? I'm like, no. What do you like to do? Do you like to walk? Do you like to ride a bike? Do you like to play pickleball? Have you tried some of these sports? Find what you enjoy to get that movement. And it's more enjoyable if you do it with other people. So I call them walkie talkies. Walk with your friends and talk. All of a sudden, you've gone 5 miles and didn't even realize it, and you've solved the world's problems to boot. Social connection. We've, especially after COVID, it got really tricky being social, didn't it? And I love social media because it gives me the ability to stay connected with people in a personal way and learn what's going on with my kids in Texas and stuff. But the negative side is it's not real, like for our call today, you don't see me, that you're just listening to me. But of course, I did my hair. I got on my best. You want to look your best, even though inside you might be saying, I hate today. I'm Eeyore and life sucks. But we put on this beautiful picture of ourselves on social media. So true social connection where we set down that cell phone, ideally turning it off after 5:30 and connecting with real humans in person. And I tell my clients, hey, if you see someone on Facebook that their mom died or their dog died or something happened, by all means, say what you're going to say, but then I recommend you text them or call them personally and make that personal connection, because that's what changes relationships. And that's what changes our life when we've got that connection. Restorative sleep. If we're stressed, it's hard to have good sleep. If we're not getting movement, it's hard to have good sleep. Good sleep starts in the morning with getting up, getting in the sunlight, having at least 20 minutes of sun, all those things we do matter. And so if we're struggling with good sleep or falling asleep, there's solutions to it. And so we need to look into what do we need to do that. And then, of course, deciding what we want to do for mindfulness. There's so many beautiful mindfulness practices, science-based. Going for a walk in nature, science-based, helps your mental health. Gardening, really good for your mental and physical health. Think when you're pulling a weed, it's like doing a squat, especially it's a hard one to get out. And getting into that dirt with just your bare hands at first, because there are little critters in there, little bacteria and different things in there that absorb through your skin that we need, that helps our gut, that helps us in a lot of ways. Then put on your gloves if you don't want to have a bunch of broken, dirty nails or whatever. But gardening is so good for us mentally and physically. And so find what we want to do for mindfulness. When I first tried meditation, I failed so wonderfully. I'd be sitting quietly and then the squirrels would come running through and I'd go down a rabbit hole and I'm like, no, you're supposed to not be thinking about anything. So I'd yell at my mind, shut up. That's not a good way to do mine. So I learned and I got certified in mindfulness training where it's like, it's okay. Notice it. It's a cloud going by, whatever you're thinking, let it pass, notice it, and then notice your breath and tie back to your breath and how it's feeling. And there's ways to get back into meditation. So there's a lot of mindful things that we can do. For many people, having a hobby that just uses their hands where they don't have to think. I have a sister-in-law that loves cross stitch. She doesn't even have to hardly think, and that's so calming for her. So there's different little hobbies and things we can do, but actual true science-based mindful habits are really beneficial. It literally lengthens our life and changes our outlook and so many other things. So those are the 5 pillars.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I loved how you mentioned earlier about Tai Chi, that mindfulness doesn't have to be holding still. It can be
Right.
different from what people maybe think it is. It
Mhm.
can be a moving meditation. In fact, any moving, repetitive motion with your major
Right.
muscle groups, like walking, running, jogging,
Mhm.
cycling, Tai Chi, that counts. And
Does.
yay for those of us who can't sit there without the squirrels running through. So
Yes.
that's fantastic. Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to make sure we cover before we close today?
I think we covered the important things. I will tell you, it's different for everyone. And that's where we need to just be intuitive and mindful. Our brain and our body know what they need. My brain, I named her Eliza after the accident because I needed to talk to her and say, okay, because when I get a headache, if I was overdoing it, which didn't take much in the beginning, I'd get a little pain in my temple. And then I noticed it would start going across my whole forehead. And if I hadn't solved it by then, explosive headache. So I learned to notice that. So notice what our body's trying to tell us. And when that first started, I knew it's time to go into my bedroom for a dark room break and put on quiet music and get rid of all the stimulation other than that. And I still do that. I notice that. And so I'll say, Eliza, I see it, but I'm on a podcast with Linda. And I promise in 5 minutes, I will go in and I'll go take care of that. And I'm telling my brain that in my mind. And then it kind of settles. And then I keep my promise to myself and go take care of it afterwards. So just pay attention to what our body's trying to tell us. If we'll listen, it'll take care of us. So
What a
thank
beautiful
you.
reminder. Our symptoms aren't necessarily bad. It
No.
is our body trying to tell us, I need something.
Yep.
And when we listen, then you can have that uh, calming down, like, oh, I've got what I need now, so I don't need to make you hurt. And if we don't listen, it'll keep flipping switches until we
Yes.
listen.
Tell us loud. It's a whisper at first, and then all of a sudden it's screaming at us. Can you not hear me?
Whatever it takes, right?
Right?
Well, Beth, thank you so much. This has been delightful.
Thank you. And I appreciate your time. And thanks for what you're doing to help the world be a little bit wiser and aware of what we can do just even through our breath to be healthier and happier.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Jim Rohn. He said, "Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live." Today, I invite our listeners to take care of their bodies and their minds and enjoy great health. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.